Japan, hahaha, it has been declining for years now. It is no longer the empire that once threatened world conquest. Its people aged, its nation declined, its economy keeps piling expenses, and its citizens are weary. Sorry, Emperor, but Japan is now just another nation. What was threatening world conquest before I arrived was China, Milcar explains calmly. A loud thunderclap sounds, drawing everyone's attention immediately. The red sky Milcar destroyed begins gathering black clouds, covering the blue sky completely. From his position, Hirohito's face turns completely red with rage and fury. His eyes watch Milcar with intentions of causing severe suffering. Impossible, Hirohito shouts in anger and disbelief. His voice carries his powerful magic energy. With just his shout, a powerful shockwave generates, causing strong winds everywhere. A light rain begins falling, driven by the powerful winds around them. In the Demon Kingdom, everyone watches Hirohito with amazement and surprise. The Demon King has never displayed such mastery over magic before. Right now, the Demon King is generating a large natural storm with anger alone. Those Chinese cannot have defeated us, Hirohito shouts angrily. We, the Japanese, are the best, he declares with rage. His body becomes covered with a powerful red light as winds intensify. From his position, Milcar simply smiles before licking his lips slowly. He mobilizes his powerful chi throughout his entire body. Milcar growls slightly as he embraces his own body tightly. His powerful chi in the second condensation stage quickly drives away black clouds. A kind of white liquid covers Milcar's body completely now. All the demons in the demon city begin disappearing as their screams echo. For a moment, a loud sound spreads throughout the environment around them. Milcar smiles from ear to ear, his powerful chi extending outward. It stops the natural disaster in its tracks, only to create chaos afterward. The several demons that disappeared slowly transform into a black amalgam gradually. It gathers into a large amalgam of darkness and energy. Only the Demon King's generals, who quickly flew behind their king, survived. At this moment, a massive amount of black liquid gathers above the kingdom center. It is the collection of all demon souls that Milcar has gathered together. Impossible, the Demon King slowly retreats with a terrified face showing fear. Although he cannot sense Milcar's chi, just being present makes breathing quicken. His body trembles, and his mind starts recalling old bad memories clearly. Behind the Demon King, his generals are in the same state of terror. Each and every one of them begins retreating slowly, watching Milcar carefully. They see him as if they were witnessing a monster before them. A slight feeling of fear, hatred, and resignation washes over Hirohito's body briefly. He clenches his teeth in anger before releasing his magic at full capacity. Hirohito's magic unleashes at full power, releasing a kind of red light. It extends through the environment and collides with the white light from Milcar's chi. As the two energies collide, a guttural sound like a demon stalking prey spreads. It reaches several miles around, creating an atmosphere of pure terror everywhere. Each of the Demon King's generals swallows hard before stepping forward courageously. Each channels their magic to merge with the Demon King's magic energy. This increases the intensity of the red glow significantly around them. For a moment, the two energies disappear into the sky and crash downward. They clash, generating sparks and strange noises, just for a moment only. Then Milcar smiles from ear to ear again with satisfaction. For a moment, Hirohito notices this and quickly stops channeling his magic immediately. He opens his eyes wide and watches Milcar with growing fear. It is necessary to perform the fusion. The Demon King shouts terrified. He charges forward with speed, an explosion of red light visible instantly. Crash! In just an instant, the Demon King reaches Milcar with incredible velocity. His one-handed sword charges forward, ready to pierce Milcar's heart directly. However, Milcar moves at great speed, grabbing the sword with bare hands. The Demon King stops dead in his tracks from the impact. Milcar's movement was so strong that Hirohito's hands are torn apart badly. The Demon King's body impacts against Milcar's body with tremendous force. For a moment, a great shockwave generates, sending powerful destructive winds everywhere. The Demon King's ribs break into several pieces as blood erupts outward. Just a little before your death, Milcar smiles without making another move. Hirohito quickly regains his senses, his magic acting to heal his wounds. Hirohito distances himself from Milcar as quickly as possible now. Dozens of meters away from Milcar in the sky, Hirohito watches with horror. Hirohito feels he is facing a god he cannot possibly defeat. His eyes watch Milcar for a moment before his heart begins aching. However, Vanir makes a move. A death ray of purple color appears. It seems to crack reality itself as it shoots toward Milcar rapidly. Vanir-style death ray, Vanir shouts, firing his ray with full power. Milcar simply raises his hand, ready to stop the death ray easily. But before he can make a move, a woman appears before him. Hee, why don't you try my instant death? The priestess woman shouts. She raises her hand to grab Milcar's face with her spell ready. Sarasdana, I ended you once, ending you again would be easy. Milcar shakes his head before grabbing Sarasdana by the neck firmly. Milcar's movement was fast, and Sarasdana had no time to dodge it. However, this is the time Sarasdana needs for her attack. Her main spell, Instant Death, releases as Vanir's death ray hits Milcar. Crash. Chapter 82, Death. The two powerful spells vanish upon mere contact with Milcar's body instantly. Both Sarasdana and Vanir open their eyes in complete disbelief. Meanwhile, Duke is already behind Milcar with his great sword descending downward. However, Milcar simply ignores Duke and channels his chi to transform Sarasdana. Ah! A great scream accompanies the sound of Duke's sword breaking. His great sword shatters upon contact with Milcar's body completely. A horrible scream tears through the air for just a moment briefly. Then Sarasdana's body transforms into a black liquid immediately afterward. That black liquid then transforms into a completely black apple instantly. Duke steps back, and the combined attacks of the generals cease entirely. They all watch Milcar with surprise, each focused on the black apple. Milcar slightly moves his hands, observing how everyone has stopped moving completely. The black amalgam, which is all demon souls gathered above the kingdom center, reduces. Its mass transforms into a black apple that quickly flies into Milcar's hands. There was a slight silence, filling the air around them. The Demon King's generals and Hirohito watch Milcar with wide eyes fearfully. None of them dares to take initiative to attack Milcar anymore. The other apple, made with thousands of demon souls, quickly flies forward. It reaches Milcar's hand, merging with Sarasdana's soul apple to become larger. At this moment, the black clouds cover the sky entirely overhead. A light acidic rain falls all around the battlefield area. Everything within several dozen miles is burning. Some magma rivers have formed. The whole world seems to have turned into a hell landscape. Milcar's mouth opens slowly, bit by bit, until it opens unnaturally wide. His great mouth with sharp teeth opens so wide it could swallow watermelons. The Demon King, Hirohito, and his generals begin trembling with unconscious fear. An unconscious fear forms in their hearts upon seeing this scene unfold. For a moment, they focus on the giant black apple in Milcar's hand. If they concentrate, they can hear screams of hundreds of thousands of demons. These demons were once alive, their voices coming from that apple clearly. Then, Milcar puts that apple into his mouth and closes it firmly. He begins to chew. With each movement of his jaw, the anguish of thousands of tormented souls echoes. For dozens of miles, screams begging for forgiveness of their sins can be heard. Their souls are completely consumed by Milcar at this very moment. Hirohito drops his sword, his eyes completely clouded and gaze fallen. His mind is unable to comprehend what is happening before him. Then Milcar swallows, and the sounds of hundreds of thousands of souls disappear. The remaining Demon King's generals can only feel a vast emptiness now. An infinite void, the universe itself appears before their minds clearly. They feel like the only beings in the empty, infinite, cold universe, stalked by a world devourer that will soon end their existences forever. If they look up, they can see the infinitely enormous image of Milcar. With a single movement of his hands, seemingly capable of crushing them entirely. A snort capable of destroying their bodies, a thought from Milcar enough to erase them. Hirohito and his generals drop their weapons, each of them enraptured by this feeling. This infinite agony brought by Milcar's chi overwhelms them completely now. This is one of the new ways to use Milcar's chi effectively, influencing his enemies' thoughts and defeating them easily without fighting at all. After swallowing, Milcar appears in front of Hirohito instantly. Milcar is in no hurry to turn Hirohito into an apple yet. He simply observes the former Japanese emperor for a moment calmly. Have you noticed anything strange about the world a few weeks ago? Milcar asks, pulling Hirohito's mind from his existential crisis for just a moment. Hirohito raises his head, the drops of acidic rain falling on his face. However, he still focuses his two black pupils on Milcar directly. It's the main god. Hirohito lets out a few words before starting to cry. His bright eyes seem to reflect his memories of youth vividly. From his mother, his father, his brothers, to when he became emperor. The old feelings of conquering the world and taking Japan to the top appear. These seem like vile memories in his thoughts now. I mean the main god, it's incredible really. I've never known someone who could accumulate so much power like this. Hirohito seems to mock himself, but his unblinking eyes only watch Milcar's figure. The main god is resetting this world, playing with some things I don't know. I don't know if he's erasing people's memories or resetting the world entirely. Maybe both, maybe neither, maybe it's a simulation, who knows. You can ask him, the main god. Hirohito speaks listlessly now. His eyes are completely red, and his pupils dilating rapidly. Milcar narrows his eyes at this revelation about a main god. A main god, this is something he hadn't heard of before now. But Milcar still remains calm and waits for Hirohito to continue speaking. Whether it's the demon kings or the heroes summoned from another world, we are all food. Food for the main god. I wanted to challenge him, I wanted to return. I wanted to go back to my country, Japan, but seeing you, that seems impossible. Why did you come to me? That means that. That you can't eliminate the main god. Hirohito speaks listlessly. His mind seemingly starting to shut down due to the mental corrosion from Milcar's chi. Milcar narrows his eyes carefully. He can't detect any lies from Hirohito. He simply observes Hirohito for another moment before making his decision. The truth is that Milcar hasn't even tried to enter the celestial plane. Thanks to his chi, he could always sense where the celestial plane is located. It's like an adjacent reality to this world, a space beyond all this. Like a world in a superior reality above everything else. Milcar observes Hirohito for a moment before shaking his head slowly. He doesn't need more information from him right now. He simply waves his hand, and all of Hirohito's generals, including Hirohito, transform. Except for Wiz, they are gradually turned into an apple form, only to later merge into a large apple in Milcar's hand. Naturally, Milcar consumed this large apple, and his chi became purer. His power increased, but he is still far from reaching the third stage. Far from reaching the third stage of foundation establishment completely. Now, Milcar has more clues about the situation at hand. The Demon King is gone, but Milcar still narrows his eyes thoughtfully. Where is Heidki Tojo, the supposed god of the Crimson Wizards? One of the reasons Milcar didn't invade the celestial plane after reaching second stage. After reaching the second stage of foundation establishment was because of Heidki Tojo. When he witnessed the sacrifice in the Crimson Wizard village, that fire appeared. That fire seemed to represent Heidki Tojo and brought a feeling of danger. The main reason was that Milcar couldn't feel any chi coming from that fire. From that fire, which let out a guttural voice at that time. Milcar had thought that the Demon King must have something similar to Tojo. Perhaps something that could challenge his chi directly. However, Milcar found nothing of the sort here. The Demon Kingdom has been destroyed, and although he has received answers, questions remain. Milcar still has more questions about why the world changed after he lost control. after he lost control of his body for a few hours previously. Chapter 83, Feelings. According to the Demon King's words, there was some kind of reset happening. Some kind of reset in the world, not total, but a regression in time. A regression that restored life to some people and erased others from this world. As Milcar thinks it over, what the Demon King said makes sense now. After all, who are Eris and Aqua really? They should be two goddesses not as powerful as the main god mentioned. Not as powerful as the main god in the mouth of the Demon King, Hirohito. However, something doesn't quite add up for Milcar at this moment. If the main god somehow altered the world to change many things, then why? Why does he still have his memories intact? Milcar doesn't believe he's special or different from anyone else here. If the main god did what he did, then he should be able to eliminate him. He should be able to eliminate him in the blink of an eye easily. Yet none of that happened to him. Milcar remains in his own thoughts, trying to find a clue about everything. But his mind can't find anything to encourage him to enter the divine plane. To enter the divine plane by force right now. While he's pondering, Wiz approaches Milcar slowly and carefully. Her mind has returned to normal, and her body trembles slightly with fear. "Master," Wiz asks with some fear, her voice barely audible as she trembles. "HMPH," Milcar says nothing, just deep in thought, trying to find clues. Trying to find some clue, but his mind can't find anything encouraging. Anything to encourage him to enter the divine plane by force yet. After a moment, Milcar simply sighs with some exasperation at the situation. "Why?" Milcar shakes his head slightly before looking at Wiz standing there. A few weeks ago, he had tried to make Wiz part of his harem. A woman with a beautiful face, a divine body that would make men desire her. However, right now Milcar can only look at Wiz and feel deep disinterest. Milcar moves one of his hands slightly, indicating to Wiz to come closer. Wiz's heart skips a beat, her body trembles, her mind seems to be working hard. Her thoughts become frantic and crazy with possibilities. Does Milcar want to turn her into an apple too? "Master, I..." Before Wiz can continue speaking, Milcar simply pats Wiz's head gently. A moment passes, and Wiz opens her eyes with surprise at this action. Her body is completely renewed. Her mind, her essence, the invasive chi fills her. The invasive chi filling Wiz's body causes her genetics to change entirely. In just an instant, Wiz begins to feel a new power mingling with her magic. First level of chi condensation, second level, fourth, fifth, sixth levels. 10 seconds were enough for Wiz to reach the 9th level of chi condensation. In just 10 seconds, Wiz, a woman who could use magic, has become something more. She has become the second existence with the highest cultivation in the world. Gulp. Wiz swallows saliva. The new power filling her body makes her feel an immense need. An immense need to release it, to strike something, or to use a powerful ability. "Is that all from now on? You will rule the Belzerg kingdom," Milcar says. Then he disappears from his position instantly. His body vanished from one moment to the next, simply blinking out of existence. Wiz opens her eyes in disbelief, her heart unable to stop trembling rapidly. Her consciousness begins to cloud with overwhelming emotions. "Why?" Wiz squints and looks at the place where Milcar was previously standing. Her vision clouds for just a moment before a faint blush appears on her face. "To rule the Belzerg kingdom," Wiz murmurs quietly with a slight smile playing on her face. The Belzerg kingdom is in complete chaos right now at this moment. Because no matter how far the Belzerg kingdom was from the demon capital, the short battle shook everything. The brief battle between Hirohito and Milcar made the world tremble slightly. Not only that, but all the demons who were in the war against human soldiers mysteriously vanished. In response, the king of Belzerg is being bombarded by various informants right now. They announce with terrified faces everything that has happened recently. In the mind of the king of Belzerg, a little fear appears clearly. He cannot understand everything that has happened at all. At this moment, in the city of Axel, the atmosphere is completely different. Completely different from that of the Belzerg kingdom entirely. Once Milcar declared war and disappeared, all the inhabitants of Axel City were eager. They were eager to hear news about the battle between Milcar and the Demon King. Just at this moment, a bright light appears above all the inhabitants. A bright light appears above all the inhabitants of Axel City now. White clouds cover the sky, blocking the sunlight from above. However, the light emitted by Milcar above the sky is comparable to sunlight in brightness. Even the light emitted by Milcar is a light that does not harm the view. Great, magnificent, incredible, and superhuman in its nature. Hi guys, Milcar speaks with a voice full of power in everyone's minds. In the minds of each and every one of the inhabitants of Axel City. The humans have defeated the demons. The Demon King is gone. I have eliminated him. There was a slight pause in his announcement. Each and every citizen in Axel City watches Milcar in the sky with surprise. With faces full of surprise and joy at this news. Milcar hesitates for a moment, his next words barely processing in his mind. Why? It's because Milcar doesn't know what to say at this moment. It's as if the feeling inside his heart cannot be expressed with simple words. Besides, what could he say to them? Milcar swallows saliva, his eyes observing each and every one of the inhabitants. Each and every one of the inhabitants of Axel City carefully. Then Milcar frowns before sighing slightly at the situation. A moment later, Milcar disappeared, the clouds dispersed, and the sun shone again. Although Milcar disappeared in the middle of a speech, leaving many citizens confused, Axel City remains lively. Axel City is still very lively. People shout with joy while several businesses start giving away products. Each and every one of them with different feelings and thoughts about the news, but sharing a sense of camaraderie among themselves. Milcar appears above the tallest tower in Axel City instantly. In this place there is no one, and it can see the entire Axel City. The view is wonderful, beautiful houses, surrounded by a giant wall, make a fantasy city. Outside, millions of hectares of virgin forest, millions of monsters to discover await. The world itself is an unknown, and life could not be more stable. Life could not be more stable at this moment right now. However, Milcar still cannot view the world in such a positive way. Since the world changed, he has always had a feeling that everything doesn't seem real. As if he were in a dream or a nightmare at all times. In constant search of something he has lost, but he doesn't know exactly what. He doesn't know exactly what it is that he lost. Is this the end? Milcar wonders as he squints, his mind trying to find something. His mind trying to find some reason, some feeling, something that makes him feel complete. Something that makes him feel at home in this place. Several feelings fill his heart, especially one that prevails above others. It is an absurd chill that freezes his bones, corrodes his thoughts completely, and makes his heart feel empty, as if something is missing from within. Something he cannot remember, something that does not exist and exists at once. Perhaps something in the subconscious depths of his mind. Milcar breathes a bit heavily as he looks out at the green landscape. At the green landscape outside Axel City, just for a moment. Just for a moment, before closing his eyes slowly. Chapter 84, Yuyui's Feelings. Milcar squints his eyes in annoyance before moving his tongue from side to side. A slight feeling of familiarity passes through his mouth right now. As a sweet taste fills his taste buds completely. What does it mean? Milcar can't remember at all. There seems to be something in the familiar taste in his mouth right now. A feeling, a taste, a lost experience from somewhere. Milcar sighs slightly before standing up from his position. The sun is already announcing the arrival of night gradually. And Milcar observes the courtyard of his castle from above. In the courtyard, Megumin and Union seem to be playing together. Union shouts passionately, while Megumin appears to be on the verge of tears. And a moment later, their roles are reversed completely. The expressions on Megumin and Union's faces are completely genuine right now. Their smiles, their cries, their expressions, and movements appear real. None of it seems to be a lie at all. Milcar squints his eyes before smiling slightly at the scene. Maybe, Milcar sighs with some resignation before disappearing from his position. A moment later, his body appears in a kitchen instantly. This is the kitchen of the governor's castle in the city of Axel. Although there are many maids, Yui has always insisted on cooking herself. At this moment, Yui is chopping several vegetables on a cutting board. The kitchen is large, and only Yui is present right now. In just an instant, Milcar appears behind Yui and embraces her from behind. Kaya, Yui lets out a gasp of surprise upon feeling someone hug her. Her heart skips a beat, and she is about to use her magic defensively. However, the familiar scent of Milcar reaching her nostrils calms her mind completely. A smile appears on Yui's face as her heart warms immediately. Her heart warms as her body begins to react to Milcar's presence. HMPH, husband, why don't you wait for me a moment? Yui blushes before putting the knife aside carefully. Her hands were about to touch Milcar playfully until she feels a slight warmth. A slight warmth reaching her neck area. This, Yui swallows hard as she quickly seems to understand something. She can't help but soften her heart at this realization. Is something wrong? Yui asks gently and caringly. There is a moment of silence as Milcar simply embraces Yui tightly. And this woman smiles slightly like a mother waiting for her child to speak. Like a mother waiting for her child to tell her about their troubles. After a moment, Milcar finishes telling Yui everything he knows about the situation. From his appearance in this world to his encounter with Aqua and how everything changed. How the whole world changed suddenly. During the process, Yui listens almost without changing her expression at all. There is a moment of silence in which Yui processes all the information received. She processes all the information she has received while humming a song calmly. She begins chopping the vegetables on the cutting board again. There seems to be something else in Yui's humming, something strange and unusual. However, Milcar simply continues hugging Yui from behind. So do you hate me? Yui asks with a slight smile forming. The sound of the knife hitting the cutting board stops for a moment. Well, who knows? Milcar smiles ironically as his blurry eyes can't catch Yui's movements. His blurry eyes can't catch Yui's hand movements clearly. Hehe, then, would you like the whole world to go back to how it was? To go back to how it was before, there is no trace of mockery. There is no trace of mockery or pity in Yui's voice at all. She simply smiles and continues chopping the vegetables while Milcar seems to hesitate. Well, you probably don't remember, but you promised me a happy life. You promised me a happy life when we got married together. My father really had a good impression of you, and my mother said something. My mother said you were the best man I could have ever got. I don't think that's correct. Yui stops chopping the vegetables momentarily. She stops chopping the vegetables as she lets out a slight sigh. Probably for you, this world is a torment, but for me, this world is my paradise. I have 2 beautiful daughters and a loving husband here. I love you despite everything, do you understand? Yui says with a slight smile. Her face changes to one of seriousness as she seems to be thinking. As she seems to be thinking about something important. Would you like to go back to the previous world? Yui asks. Milcar's eyes are blurry as there is a slight drizzle over Yui's shoulder. And Milcar can barely process Yui's words right now. The feeling of existential emptiness inside Milcar has worsened significantly now. In front of him, there are 2 universes before his vision. His sight can only capture the color black, the stars shining millions of miles away, only showing their fleeting and ancient light from far distances. The 2 universes in front of him are like galaxies with infinite possibilities. An infinite number of worlds, and an infinite amount of power within them. If he could just touch one of those universes, Milcar is sure something would happen. Milcar is sure his chi would reach infinity immediately. The true essence of life and death would be something written in his mind. And the essence of the universe would be captured by his soul entirely. Faced with this decision, Milcar doesn't know which path to choose at all. Before and after, mixed feelings like a poisoned cocktail slowly going down his throat. Slowly going down his dry throat painfully. Senseless thoughts fill his mind, and his morale has fallen to absolute zero. Before or after what to choose, what to do. For an instant, Milcar lowers his head as his mind becomes an amalgam. His mind becomes an amalgam of empty and senseless thoughts completely. His heart despairs, the feeling of existential emptiness within his heart slowly gnaws at his cells while his eyes shed tears. Milcar's dry lips open slightly, and he is pulled out of his thoughts. Hugging a woman who has revealed her deep feelings for him honestly. A woman who loves him, a woman who appeared out of nowhere before him. A woman with whom Milcar is not familiar at all. Milcar licks his lips before staying silent for a moment. Time passes minute by minute, and Milcar doesn't know what to do now. Well, dinner will be ready soon. Why don't you sit down to eat? Today I made the dish you like so much, Yuyui hums gently. And Milcar nods before sitting in a chair in front of a large table. Megumin and Komko don't take long to arrive at the table. As always, the two lively girls hug Milcar while animatedly recounting their adventures. Of the day to him. Milcar can't help but sigh and observe his family sitting there. A beautiful woman, two wonderful daughters. He is the most powerful existence in this world. The Demon King defeated, looking ahead, only a happy life exists before him. Is this the end? Milcar squints his eyes with some nostalgia, before sighing with some resignation. Milcar licks his lips before eating the delicious food in front of him. Days go by normally, weeks, months pass, the Belzerg kingdom received the news. The news that the Demon King was defeated, and that Wiz would take over. Naturally, there was opposition that was easily defeated by Wiz's power. In just days, the Belzerg kingdom ended up under Wiz's control completely, crowning herself as the new queen of the kingdom. Although Milcar has been spending these days with a slight smile, still something remains. Still a slight trace of hope filled his heart, and the reason is Heidki Tojo. Every year, the Crimson Magic Clan makes a sacrifice to the god Heidki Tojo. Previously, Milcar thought Heidki Tojo would be alongside Hirohito in battle. However, that didn't happen that way at all. Heidki simply didn't appear anywhere. So, what does this mean exactly? Milcar licks his lips, his eyes watching the village leader on this day. Chapter 85, Impotence. Sir Milcar, the preparations are ready. We've gathered several wild animals. For the offering to the god, said the village chief. He said this with a faint, nervous smile on his face. Earlier, Milcar had overheard an unusual conversation between the chief and Heidki Tojo. One that mentioned the Demon King directly. Now, curiosity and unease stirred within him strongly. He had asked the chief several times about Heidki and the supposed plan. Of their god repeatedly. It was divine will to defeat the Demon King, the chief had said, chuckling uneasily. But you, Mr. Milcar, you acted first, perhaps the god is displeased. Or maybe even amused, he added nervously. Soon after, the ritual began with the villagers chanting and burning their offerings. Hours passed as the fire roared, the air thick with smoke and incense. But Heidki Tojo never appeared at all. The chief's face grew pale with fear. Impossible, he shouted, his voice trembling with desperation. This can't be happening, no. Around the great fire, the Crimson Mages whispered among themselves nervously. Panic began to spread throughout the gathered crowd. Maybe we didn't give enough offerings to the god. No, perhaps the god is busy somewhere else. We must repent, this is punishment for our sins. Their voices clashed in fear and desperation around the fire. And then, the chief's expression twisted with rage suddenly. His trembling hand pointed straight at Milcar directly. It's you, he screamed loudly with anger. You cursed this ritual, you traitor. The crowd went silent immediately after his accusation. Megumin, Yuyui, and Komko stood frozen behind Milcar protectively. Even Union, trembling, couldn't find her voice to speak. Milcar only sighed at the accusation calmly. So what will you do now? He said quietly, his expression calm but distant. Eliminate me, blame me for your god's silence. Silence, you're nothing but filth, the chief roared, raising his staff threateningly. Before he could take a single step, Milcar's chief flared powerfully. An overwhelming pressure, crashing through the air like a storm instantly. Every Crimson Mage dropped to their knees, unable to breathe at all. Only Yuyui, Komko, Megumin, and Union were spared from this pressure. Enough, Milcar said firmly to everyone present. If Heike Tojo won't appear, then this farce ends here now. He sighed softly, then vanished in a flash of light instantly, taking his family and Yunyan with him immediately. The last thing he saw before disappearing was the terrified face of someone. The terrified face of the man who once called himself Yunyan's father. When they reappeared, they stood in the grand hall of an old castle. The silence was heavy, broken only by the faint echo of their breathing. Milcar exhaled, half tired, half amused by the situation. So this is how it turned out, he murmured with a small smile forming. He placed a hand gently atop Yunyan's head affectionately. Yui watched silently, her expression unreadable at this moment. She never imagined Milcar would grow so close to anyone again like this. A quiet ache stirred in her chest as she remembered his words from before. His words from days before about everything. If all of this were just an illusion, would our feelings still matter? Memories flooded her mind, memories that felt more real than dreams ever could. The young Milcar who once courted her with awkward sincerity back then. The man who had protected her from danger. The vows they exchanged at their wedding 3 years ago clearly. She smiled faintly, though her eyes were distant and thoughtful. If I had to choose, she thought, I'd rather he stayed here forever. Even if this world isn't the one we came from originally. Yunyan, still flustered, stepped forward toward Milcar carefully. Mr. Milcar, she stammered, her face red with embarrassment. Megumin narrowed her eyes, clearly not amused by this at all. Oh no, you don't, she muttered, clutching her staff tightly. Back away, Yunyan, she warned her rival. For a moment, the air between the two crimson mages crackled with rivalry clearly. Until Milcar let out a quiet laugh, cutting the tension immediately. Days passed peacefully after that incident at the village. The remaining crimson mages, other than Yunyan and Milcar's family, left the castle. They left the castle to rebuild their village elsewhere. Yunyan stayed, unwilling to return to her father, who had fallen into madness. Now, walking through the castle corridors with Wiz, Milcar seemed more at ease. The ancient walls echoed softly with their footsteps as they walked. Sir Milcar, Wiz asked gently, glancing at him curiously. How was I before, in your old world? Milcar chuckled faintly at her question. You were the same, kind, loyal, and far too patient with me always. Wiz smiled softly at his answer. That sounds about right for me. He nodded, stopping by a window to look outside. The evening light cast a warm glow on both of them standing there. Those memories, he said quietly, they remind me that even if everything changes, something remains. Some people still carry their light within them. Wiz tilted her head with curiosity. You sound almost sentimental, Sir Milcar. Maybe I am, he replied with a small laugh forming. After all, this world still needs people like you here. The two walked on in silence together peacefully. Not the silence of strangers, but of two souls who had seen too much. Souls who had seen too much, and somehow found comfort in what remained. In what little peace remained for them. Chapter 86, Some of the Time. You're terrible, a thief, a fool, Milcar laments before calming down slightly. He stands up and disappears from the place, but not before leaving Wiz's body. Leaving Wiz's body on a bed, in one of the many rooms of the castle. A moment later, Milcar simply wrote several orders in a letter for Wiz. He wrote several orders in a letter for Wiz and flew away immediately. Days go by normally after that. In a dwelling near a lake, with an extensive garden and numerous trees close by, Milcar observes Komko gathering herbs. Presently, Milcar rests in a rocking chair. Behind him stands a lovely, modest home with several rooms. Following the events involving Wiz, Milcar relocated to an isolated spot in a nearby forest alongside Yui, Megumin, and Komko. Seated in the rocking chair, Milcar cannot shake the feeling that something is absent. Perhaps darkness, Milcar ponders with a frown, though he dismisses the thought moments later. Regardless of past circumstances, darkness had been entirely under Milcar's chi influence. Her previous actions and emotions weren't genuine. While Milcar could disregard this and simply seek darkness for intimacy, he cannot help feeling somewhat uneasy. It resembles being informed that all his accomplishments were meaningless because he employed some sort of shortcut. He also couldn't deny Darkness's joyful, completely content expression when Milcar witnessed her playing with Kazuma. Milcar recalls that Darkness never displayed such happiness when she was around him. Therefore, Milcar has chosen to set that matter aside temporarily and concentrate on his family, naturally, on gaining strength. His goal remains to confront the main god in the near future. Even so, why does he feel this way? Why do I feel angry? It's like something is bothering me. Milcar narrows his eyes before a figure enters his view. I'm home, Megumin calls out to announce her return. A professional magic academy has recently opened not far from Axel City. Megumin has been attending that institution regularly. Though it's called an academy, it's more accurate to describe it as a magic university. Milcar nods, while watching Megumin set her backpack aside before she leaps into Milcar's embrace. Dad, Megumin beams happily while hugging Milcar tightly. Just for an instant before Milcar gently closes his eyes. When he opens them again, time has elapsed, years have passed steadily. The Megumin embracing him now is a young woman. She has developed a shapely figure and an attractive face, though Milcar harbors no improper thoughts about her. Throughout the years, Milcar has achieved the 9th level of foundation establishment. His lifespan has extended to hundreds of thousands of years. Although several years have gone by, the feeling of resentment in Milcar's heart has only grown stronger. Why don't you ask your mother to prepare some banana bread? Milcar suggests. Megumin nods slightly with her head, smiling occasionally and chuckling because Milcar seems somewhat different today. Before Milcar can do anything to rise from the rocking chair, a gentle voice sounds not far away. Sir, a beautiful and clear voice with a tone of allure and seduction reaches him from near an orange tree. It's Aunt Wiz, Megumin, who spotted the woman, quickly smiles before running to embrace Wiz. There was a brief exchange of glances, in which Wiz gave Milcar a mental message, indicating something new to report. Milcar nods before Wiz enters the small dwelling with Megumin and Milcar. There was a light dinner prepared by Yuyui. Afterward, Megumin and Komko went to sleep. At a small round table, drinking from a glass of wine, Milcar stares ahead with a distant look, waiting for Wiz. Sir, Milcar narrows his eyes. Wiz's voice has always been charming, but why does Yuyui seem hostile toward Wiz? Wiz touches the back of her neck slightly before smiling somewhat nervously. Sir, new heroes have emerged. A new demon king has also appeared, Wiz says with some embarrassment. After all, Milcar had ordered the capture of any hero or demon king that appeared. Milcar continues drinking the wine in his glass for a moment before giving Wiz a slight glance. Sir, a hero mentioned he was summoned to this world by a goddess named Aqua, Wiz announces with a serious tone. HMPH, is that so? Haha, it won't be long before I can reach the golden core, Milcar narrows his eyes. Both Megumin, Komko and Yuyui understand what Milcar's words mean. Especially Yuyui, who cannot help but feel a little sorrow in her heart. There was a brief moment of silence. Milcar squinted with a growing sense of hope. Despite the hatred for the main god that has intensified in Milcar's heart, it doesn't mean he wants to enter rashly. Without more information or power, Milcar can accomplish nothing by entering the divine plane simply to seek that god. Is that so? Heh. Milcar laughed lightly while observing Wiz's form. Wiz blushed, her body swaying from side to side, her heart beating rapidly as various emotions filled her being. Throughout the years, Milcar has been teasing Wiz, sending his chi occasionally to stir this voluptuous woman. Milcar, a man affected by a curse he remains unaware of, couldn't help but feel somewhat amused by the situation. He observed how Wiz had often pleaded and asked him to be with her. However, Milcar did nothing, not because he didn't want to, but because he was unable. Now, just a look from Milcar is enough to make Wiz feel a strong reaction. So, what are we waiting for? Milcar smiled while concealing the anxiety in his heart. Wiz nodded slightly before using a teleportation spell for herself and Milcar. At a table in the Adventurers Guild, there were several people sitting, one of them a well-dressed man. Another was a solemn-looking woman, and one more, a boy of about 10 years old. The three of them were speaking calmly while seated in their chairs, eating some frog meat. At this moment, two beings appeared almost out of nowhere, as if they had materialized near the group. There was a brief moment of silence. The man narrowed his eyes and stood up almost immediately. But before he could do anything, his eyes focused with interest on Wiz. "Good morning, Mr. Biden," Wiz smiled with dignity, while Milcar simply remained observant. "Haha, Mrs. Wiz, you should have informed us you would return so soon, please," Biden said. But before he could do anything, Milcar had already moved at great speed, swiftly ending Biden's life. The woman and the child opened their eyes in surprise, but the next moment, their bodies collapsed like puppets. "Hehe, more new heroes have fallen," Milcar smiled. For the last years, he had been using this method. Every hero arriving at the novice Axel city would be eliminated by Milcar. Then their bodies would be used to become an apple, with Milcar absorbing their souls and strengthening himself. The first time he did this, Milcar felt how a bit of divinity fused with his chi, enhancing its purity. Since then, he hasn't stopped doing it. This consumption of the souls of transmigrants from another world coming to this wonderful world has resulted in rapid cultivation advancement. Now, Milcar doesn't understand why, despite the passing years, the gods keep sending transmigrants to this exact location. However, Milcar doesn't waste time on these questions and simply begins to review Mr. Biden's and his family's memories. "Former president of my beloved America," Milcar couldn't help but feel a bit of irony reviewing Biden's memories. He was a former president of the United States who died of old age, then appeared with his family rejuvenated. Watching the goddess Aqua act sweetly and innocently in front of Biden in those memories, Milcar couldn't help feeling nostalgic. In Biden's memories, Aqua hadn't aged. She still wore that blue outfit. Her eyes were as vivid and bright as ever. For a moment, Milcar lingered on Aqua's image before shaking his head. His cultivation had advanced again, nearing the golden core stage. At this moment, Milcar felt eager anticipation. All this time had served to prepare himself for what was coming. Now that the golden core was so close he could almost grasp it, a slight desperation emerged in his heart. Milcar couldn't help but recall Kazuma. Besides Kazuma, Milcar had eliminated everyone who had reincarnated in this world, including Mitsurugi, all because Milcar wanted Kazuma to enjoy time with darkness. But now that his ascension to the golden core was so near, Milcar could only accept what needed to be done. Fortunately, at the Adventurers Guild, a couple entered, smiling, radiant. They looked like the perfect couple. One of them wore shiny armor, her face was lovely, her body appealing, none other than darkness. She hadn't aged a day since Milcar last saw her. The other was Kazuma, now an adult man. He had a strong appearance and an attractive face. Milcar, as the man Wiz admires, is known throughout the Belzerg kingdom. Naturally, Kazuma and Darkness noticed Milcar's presence. They approached to bow before him. "Good morning, sir." Both greeted Milcar while bowing respectfully. "HMPH, good morning," Milcar responded to the greeting, his eyes coldly observing Kazuma, then looking at Darkness. Milcar felt a calculating anticipation. "Mr. Kazuma, I've been told you managed to defeat the Black Dragon dozens of miles to the north. Is that true?" Milcar asked, making Kazuma lift his head and puff out his chest. "It's completely true, sir, haha, although of course I didn't do it alone." Kazuma blushed slightly while rubbing his hair. "HMPH, very well then," Milcar smiled, causing a chill to run through Kazuma's heart. Darkness's body became alert, her eyes widened enormously, her senses fully attentive, her instinct activating. Darkness was about to push Kazuma, however. Before she could do anything, Milcar struck Kazuma's chest with one hand. "Mr. Kazuma, it has been a pleasure knowing you." Milcar smiled before starting to transform Kazuma's body into a black apple. Darkness's eyes opened impossibly wide, her teeth clenched, her muscles completely tense. "Curse you!" Darkness shouted before trying to charge at Milcar to stop him, but Wiz restrained her with a single restriction spell. Observing Darkness, Milcar showed a confident smile and a slightly calculating look. "Before you belonged to me, you are just living in a dream, Darkness, Soon everything will return to the real world. Smiling calmly, Milcar ignored Darkness's muffled screams and consumed the apple. Milcar didn't take long to assimilate the apple and absorb all the chi along with Kazuma's soul. Milcar's eyes widened enormously. Before him, the entire world seemed to halt, time itself paused. The colors of the world changed to black and white. Soon everything will return to how it was before, Milcar murmured slightly, his body beginning to assimilate Kazuma's soul. His chi started to mutate slightly and gradually. Behind Milcar, Wiz opened her mouth slightly as if she was about to say something. Sir, Wiz narrowed her eyes with some fear. If you achieve what you want, then what happens to me? Wiz asked with some anxiety. However, Milcar had already disappeared from his place. High above, dozens of miles away from the ground, Milcar rose along with the clouds, his body floating. His chi mutating, his power beginning to transform. The chi of everything in the world, flowers, plants, the earth, everything began to accumulate within Milcar's body. This caused it to change slightly. The clouds around Milcar and throughout the earth began to disappear. Gradually, all the world's energy was absorbed. From the Belzerg kingdom to the city of Axel, everyone watched and pointed at a bright golden point in the sky. It was a golden point different from the sun, smaller than the sun but with an intense brightness. The brightness didn't hurt the eyes. The clouds in the sky gathered and were absorbed by that golden glow. Gradually, people started falling unconscious. The exhaustion was caused by Milcar absorbing their chi. Looking at the sky from her position, Yui narrowed her eyes, her body feeling tired, her mind clouded. Her consciousness on the verge of fading. For a moment, she thought of Milcar before smiling slightly. What can she do at this moment? Yui felt helpless before tightly hugging little Komko and Megumin in her arms. After all, according to Milcar, this world is nothing but an illusion. An illusion? HMPH. Yui murmurs as she hugs Komko and Megumin who don't know what's happening. Wiz, Luna, several adventurers, all the people and animals in the world fell unconscious. The plants withered. The sky became completely empty. It took just a minute for Milcar to absorb a large amount of chi. His body shone with an intense golden hue. His chi constantly changed. In just a moment, time stopped. Everything turned black and white, with only Milcar shining in gold. He seemed to be the sole existence in a lifeless, empty world. In the divine plane here, many gods, both men and women, lived in harmony. The divine plane itself was a large white city, each god representing an element, emotion, sin, or some other aspect. They existed and lived in this white city. Within the city were all kinds of facilities, but one of the most used were the reincarnation rooms. As gods in the divine plane, they had the obligation and duty to manage several worlds. One of them being the world Milcar was in. Coming out of one of the reincarnation rooms, a blue-haired, bright-eyed teenager sighed with fatigue. Then, she narrowed her eyes. This teenager was none other than Aqua. She narrowed her eyes with some doubts. Because a moment ago, she had tried to send a person to the wonderful world she was in charge of. But the connection with that world kept failing. So, Aqua had to simply send that soul to paradise, despite the soul's resistance. Aqua ran her hand through her hair, rubbing it slightly. "Why do I feel like I'm forgetting something?" Aqua murmured in a tired voice. Lately, she had been having random thoughts and strange memories. However, Aqua simply shook her head before trying to walk to a divine restaurant. But at that moment, the entire white city shook slightly, catching the attention of all the gods. "What does this mean?" A black-haired god asked with a frown, in the hundreds of thousands of years of the white city's existence. Nothing like this had ever happened. The ground shook slightly, producing a slight vibration that increased in intensity. The god of war, Apal, narrowed his eyes. The sensation this event gave him was one of absolute danger. However, Aqua, on the other hand, couldn't stop touching her head. Something made her brain start to recall blurry scenes. Her mind began to ache horribly. Not far from Aqua, Eris had the same effect, constantly holding her head. Before any god could do anything, a golden light covered the white city, making the gods look in one direction. Several gods watched as a golden light, floated thousands of miles away from the White City. This golden light seemed to carry great divine power. However, the divine power that this golden light had was barely half of what even the lowest-ranking god should have. So, why could it appear in the White City? At this moment, several gods thought that probably a new god was about to be born, but why now? The Father God has been retired for more than 15,000 years. No one has received any message from him. The black-haired god of war murmured between his teeth. Besides him, few gods had ever witnessed the birth of a new god. Even many of them were directly created by the Father God. Because of this, several gods, such as the goddess of nature, the goddess of fire, and the god of the sea, they quickly rose into the sky, ready to use their divine power to fly to where this golden light was, to see what was happening. However, the god of war, the most powerful among the gods, couldn't help but sense that something was wrong. The divine energy that the golden light possessed wasn't the important thing. What mattered was the great amount of strange energy it had. It felt like the primordial energy of the universe, condensed so much that even divinity seemed like common energy compared to it. Before the god of war could do anything, the three gods of nature, the sea, and fire accelerated to investigate. Above the sky of the White City, three flashes of light in different colors, green, blue, and red, rushed forward. They moved like shooting stars towards the golden light in the distance. "Wait!" the god of war shouted in the minds of the three gods to prevent them from rushing towards something unknown. However, the three gods simply smiled slightly. "Brother, we will deal with that thing if it's dangerous. When I return, you need to have a duel with me, all right?" HMPH. The confident responses of the three gods were clear, making the god of war grumble in his place. At that moment, a simple-looking goddess and several gods behind her approached the god of war quickly. "Brother, what's happening? I no longer feel the existence of the Father God." The god of war cannot help but feel a sharp pain in his chest. It is not uncommon for situations to occur. The Father God disappearing from existence for a few seconds has happened for a long time, however. Why now? In his own place, the god of war swallows slightly. His head slowly turns towards the golden light for just a moment, before slightly shaking his head. Before the god of war can give orders to his brothers to stay on guard, the world gradually loses color. Sound disappears, the god of war opens his eyes in surprise and tries to shout, but no words come out. It's as if all colors except black and white have disappeared from existence. The sense of touch, hearing, and smell cease functioning. They no longer seem to work correctly for the god of war. Quickly, the god of war focuses on the golden light in the distance. Even though everything has changed to black and white, that light in the distance remains a bright golden color. The god of war's thoughts slow down, his body becomes slightly paralyzed. His wide-open eyes cannot stop watching that golden light in the distance. It is as if his existence is solely to observe it. Brilliant, ethereal, magnificent, as the god of war watches that light, his body enters a state of unparalleled peace. The feeling that overwhelms him is one of deep peace and serenity, floating in a warm embrace while traveling through the universe. Observing different worlds and species, there is no need to think, speak, or do anything. The god of war and the other gods simply stand, observing that golden light. Although there are many gods with different thoughts, they all agree on one idea and think of something at the same time. What if existence was rest? In total peace, traveling through the universe, there is no loneliness, no emptiness in their hearts. There is no other feeling but the profound and warm embrace that makes them feel at home after a long journey. For a moment, the entire White City stands still. The three gods of the sea, nature, and fire become paralyzed. They are a few miles from the source of the golden light, their eyes completely white with slight golden tones reflected in them. The feeling of pleasure is interrupted by a majestic voice that speaks directly to their minds, a calm and tranquil voice. It has no specific tone. "Do you like this?" the voice asks, unconsciously. All the gods nod their heads at the same time. Milcar, noticing how his body has completely changed, can only observe the gods in this place with disappointment. Are these the true gods who rule the universe? Milcar narrows his eyes, even though he has no eyes. At this moment, Milcar has completely transformed into a golden energy core. His human physical body has turned into purest energy. It has become the most divine energy in the universe. The primordial energy. Now, Milcar can clearly see these beings for what they are. With a single thought, Milcar can see the gods' feelings, their desires, thoughts, wishes, and sins. Milcar, in his own place, smiles even though he has no lips and cannot help but extend an amalgamation of his chi. It is a sort of golden liquid that swiftly heads toward the three closest gods. All the gods in the White City watch the gods of nature, fire, and the sea at that moment. Their eyes completely focus on the thing moving like a kind of viscous golden liquid towards the three gods. For a moment, without any reason, a touch of envy fills the hearts of the gods, only for a moment. Before that liquid attaches to the bodies of the three gods. There was no resistance. The goddess of nature, the god of the sea, and the god of fire simply lowered their arms. They accepted the liquid wrapping around their bodies. However, what happened next surprised all the gods, as soon as the bright golden liquid covered the bodies of the three gods. Their screams of agony resonated in their heads, screams of total horror that affected the hearts of every god in the White City. In just a moment, the feeling of pleasure and tranquility that enveloped their bodies transformed into a feeling of dread and fear. As gods, they rarely feel true terror, at this moment, when Milcar's golden liquid is absorbing the souls of the three gods, turning them into part of his energy. Only feelings of sadness and pain fill the bodies of the gods in the White City. Jacques. Suddenly, everyone in the White City lets out a cry of pain, feeling a profound shock within their bodies, as if their internal organs were trying to escape. However, amidst all this, no one realizes that two goddesses have fallen unconscious and are unaware of anything happening around them. These are, of course, Eris and Aqua. Curse it, the first to snap out of the trance is the god of war. Having used his divinity to escape the influence of Milcar's chi, he deploys his power to its maximum capacity, letting his divinity cover all his siblings in the White City. The god of war watches with pain and rage as the golden liquid finishes, absorbing the souls and bodies of the three gods. In just an instant, then, that golden liquid returns to Milcar. "Who are you?" the god of war shouts. The other gods in the White City break free from the influence of Milcar's chi. They proceed to draw their weapons and let out a war cry. "Ha ha ha, brother, don't you remember me? It's me, Fanny," says Milcar, who absorbed the souls of the three gods, before taking the appearance of the goddess of nature and appearing before the god of war. There was a slight moment of silence. The long black-haired god of war takes a few steps back, before looking at Milcar with cautious eyes. The gods will prevail over everything. The gods rule the universe. The gods will conquer evil. A slight chant with the coordinated voice of several gods can be heard. It seems to be a kind of magic. It is cast when several gods begin to sing. The god of war smiles slightly upon hearing this chant. It seems his siblings have already reacted and are ready to attack. "Even if you put on that horrible expression, you won't scare me," the god of war smiles slightly, before pulling out a somewhat strange sword with various odd edges out of nowhere. Milcar, who is grinning widely, lets out a slight growl before using his chi to increase the gravity several times. For all the gods in the White City. Crash! In just an instant, the sound of plate armor and flesh colliding with the ground can be heard. All the gods who were chanting and the god of war fall to their knees. Chapter 90, Heidki Tojo appears. "Now, let's see what's behind all of this," Milcar murmurs slightly before touching the head of the god of war. "What the hell are you doing?" The curses of the god of war, who cannot move his body or his divinity due to Milcar's chi. They are not heard. What Milcar sees is easily how it all began, from the creation of the planets to the creation of the gods. The gods were created by a father god, a god above these gods in the White City. Then, something that interests Milcar is to check if this god in front of him has any interesting memories. However, Milcar finds none. Sighing to himself, Milcar moves his hand from side to side. In an instant, all the gods begin to scream in agony. Each one of them cannot help but feel their body being destroyed. Their soul being consumed, their existence being erased from the universe, all except Eris and Aqua. In just an instant, those gods also turned into energy that only increased Milcar's power. Is this it? Milcar narrows his eyes upon finding himself resting in a place not far from Aqua. Aqua's appearance is just as Milcar remembered, a blue dress of the water goddess, wearing that short skirt. It made Milcar unable to avoid looking at her delicate and smooth legs, a beautiful face, the most beautiful Milcar had ever seen. And a happy smile. Milcar observes Aqua for a moment before looking at Eris, not far from Aqua. Eris, with long hair, gives a sense of maturity and serenity, wearing a dress almost like a nun's and a small, charming face. She looks like a small, happy, and dazzling nun. However, Milcar, for the moment, simply decides to leave them where they are and visit the Father God. In the memories of various gods, Milcar could see how the Father God lives on the tallest tower in the island. Above the tallest tower, at the center of the White City. With this, Milcar simply disappears and appears above the tallest tower, a white tower so tall. It seems to have the same length as the entire diameter of the solar system, if converted to a straight line. However, Milcar, in the Golden Core, simply needs a thought to advance this distance. Floating in empty space like a small floating island, there is a small stream that flows into a small river. On the small green island, with trees and plants that Milcar has never seen before. The animals here are extremely strange, a kind of flies fused with red-colored bees that are resting on the tops. Some strangely shaped trees, they resemble bonsais, but instead of their classic branch formations, they look like a bunch of straight figures that sometimes slide to one side and other times to the other. The yellow grass is a meter high, with pink-colored rabbits with almost human-like bodies working to collect some bright green herbs. Milcar watches this scene for a moment before descending onto the island. When his feet touch the ground, nothing happens. Simply everything, from the small animals to the trees, continues with their movements. Some trees or herbs moving slowly, and the animals working or collecting herbs or sleeping. Milcar ignores them and walks to the small hut in the center of the island. A dilapidated wooden door that looks like it could break with a single kick is the only thing protecting the entrance to the wooden hut. On the door, there is a sign that says, "If you want to know the origin of the universe, you must understand the movement of the trees and animals." Milcar narrows his eyes. Why would this be written? However, despite the doubt, Milcar delicately opens the door. The light from outside immediately enters the hut, illuminating a small throne made of dry branches from some ancient tree. On that throne, an old man who seems to have passed away a long time ago due to the state of his body. He rests lifelessly. Milcar cautiously takes a few steps forward, but thud. Before Milcar can take another step, he feels his whole body freeze. His mind takes a backseat. His body and chi have stopped responding to his orders. Milcar can only notice with horror that what happened with Yui is occurring again. That night is happening again. "Haha, you fell for the old trick, American." An old, hoarse voice is heard in Milcar's mind. A strange black amalgam covers Milcar's body. A strange face materializes in front of Milcar, almost as if it were saying, "Look at me." The face is easily recognizable. With a distinctive beard and an ancient hat, the head of Hideki Tojo appears before Milcar. "I didn't think you would get this far, dear. It has been some time since such a feat was seen. It would be good to congratulate you, hehe." Hideki Tojo shows a calm smile as he looks at Milcar with certainly greedy eyes. Milcar cannot understand what is happening. How is it possible that Hideki Tojo can control his body? Several thoughts pass through Milcar, until a simple ironic smile appears in his mental image. "Mr. Hideki, it is certainly something complicated." Milcar speaks within Hideki's mind, apparently having regained some control of his chi. Hideki Tojo's face distorts slightly, his completely empty eyes looking at Milcar with malice. Milcar, who has regained some control of his chi, moves one of his hands slightly, still not managing full control of his body. Hideki doesn't know what Milcar plans to do. His face simply disappears. The black liquid begins to cover Milcar's entire body. "It's impossible, Mr. Milcar. You cannot fight against me, don't you remember? You should have read the last line of the contract," Heidke says with a smile within Milcar's mind. A slight thought passes through Milcar until his mind cannot help but recall the moment he visited that website in his previous life. Certainly, Milcar had ignored the last words at the bottom of the instructions for performing the ritual. Anyone who attempts the ritual must keep in mind one problem: the ancient god must claim something as a reward. For sending them to another world, the reward is... Milcar cannot remember exactly, his eyes squint mentally. In just a moment, Milcar appears in a mental space where the universe can be observed. Milcar is standing on top of a golden platform, surrounded by a universe that seems infinite, with some stars twinkling. Several comets passing hundreds of thousands of miles away. In front of Milcar, Heidke Tojo appears with a business-like smile. "Mr. Milcar, it has been a while since you accepted the contract. You didn't know because you didn't read it, but you accepted it." "I mean," Heidke Tojo coughs slightly while adjusting his World War II general's suit. "Time is up, Mr. Milcar. Now you belong to me, you are mine, how can I put it? Work for me." Heidke Tojo smiles slightly, moving his hands to conjure several holograms of small floating worlds in front of him. "Great Demon King, do you understand? Archmage, Evil God, Chukunlin, you should already remember, I need some things from there. Especially I need to establish an army." Heidke Tojo adjusts his round glasses and smiles broadly in Milcar's direction. "You don't remember, but before you passed in your previous life, you made a wish. Do you remember Lisa from Great Demon King? Haha, it's a fantasy, but the world exists, you can do it." Heidke Tojo returns to his formal appearance, looking at Milcar with bright eyes and waiting for his response. Milcar, on the other hand, simply raises an eyebrow in Heidke Tojo's direction before bursting into laughter. "Haha, do you think this is a game? I'm not going to that world, maybe you, an imperial Japanese from old Japan, are a man of colonial or conquest ideas, but I simply need a break right now." Milcar refuses. He has no reason to go to another world and start conquering it. He doesn't want to, at least not for now. Heidke narrows his eyes, looking at Milcar, his teeth showing a bit sharp thanks to his smile. "Do you forget that you accepted my contract? You owe it to me. This world, Aqua, Eris, your companions. And your group of people, everything is thanks to me." Heidke Tojo spits with rage, his eyes completely focused on Milcar. Heidke looks like a lion about to pounce on his prey. "Is that so?" Milcar snorts before smiling falsely. "Tell me something, what happened to the previous world? Why did everything change?" Milcar asks. This is something he has wanted to know for a long time, and it seems that Heidke has the answer here. In his mind, Milcar is devising several ways to eliminate Heidke, however, without knowing exactly what contract he accepted. Milcar doesn't have many ways to counter Heidke. Haha, does the great Milcar miss his former companions? But nothing happened, there are several timelines in the universe. I simply played a little with the timelines to change to a timeline where you would feel obligated to make more effort. To do what needs to be done, nothing important. Heidke smiles as if waiting for a compliment. However, Milcar simply narrows his eyes at Heidke's response, not because he was angry, but because despite his cultivation level. In the Golden Core stage, he never realized there are multiple timelines. "But you don't need to worry, as long as you accept my proposal, we can collaborate in a good way. I can travel to the other timeline, where you disappeared, and bring your companions to accompany you to the world of Great Demon King." Heidke Tojo nods his head while smiling paternally at Milcar. "Besides, why not? What the heck were you doing? Don't you remember? Power, women, eternity, what happened? Before you wanted it all the women of the different worlds, all the power, we had a deal, Milcar, you don't remember." Heidke Tojo narrows his eyes, observing Milcar. There was a slight moment of silence. In his own place, Milcar can remember several nights in his old world. At that moment, he really wanted to enter the anime world. Touch what he could only dream or imagine, have it all. Great Demon King was Milcar's favorite fantasy world, however. When did it start to change? Milcar narrows his eyes for a moment before smiling to himself. What's changed? I guess I'm foolish, Mr. Heidke, so tell me, being intoxicated, could you remember why you get up every day? Milcar looks down slightly as if he were apologizing, although Milcar does not remember having made any deal with Heidke. This man's words are really what Milcar wanted. From one moment to the next, Milcar begins to use his chi. His body begins to distort as his chi begins to boil. Mr. Heidke, time is up. I don't need someone to control my body. Milcar smiles slightly. His eyes like two bright lights watching Heidke Tojo. Milcar now understands. Why is Heidke trying to convince him of something? Why doesn't Heidke simply erase his mind and control him? Like a slave. A simple answer in Milcar's mind is because Heidke cannot. He cannot because he doesn't have the ability to do so. At this moment, Milcar's body begins to change from a physical state to a liquid state. Milcar's mind begins to change. His pure chi directly affects his own soul. Heidke's eyes widen, his heart skips a beat, his mind barely understands what Milcar is trying to do. Wait, Heidke shouts. Trying to stop Milcar, however, Heidke's soul, connected to Milcar's soul thanks to the contract, trembles slightly. After using his chi to investigate why Heidke could control his body, Milcar realized that his soul and Heidke's soul had slightly fused. This, to Milcar, is clearly the reason why Heidke can do everything he does with his body. However, that doesn't mean Milcar can't act. The various thoughts in Milcar's mind unify, his chi becomes purer, while Milcar's soul splits in two. The part of his soul that was corrupted and fused with Heidke's soul separates from Milcar's pure soul. In the small hut, a great explosion of chi is generated. However, the hut doesn't suffer any damage. Milcar's body, which has the appearance of the goddess of nature, splits in two. Heidke is expelled from Milcar's soul in the form of a viscous black liquid as soon as it separates from Milcar's body. It quickly takes the form of Heidke Tojo. At this moment, Heidke looks furiously at the bright golden core that is Milcar's real body, his eyes filled with ferocity and greed. They can't help but slightly pop out of their sockets. A kind of mocking feeling passes through Heidke's body before he smirks. Heh, Sir Milcar, and what will you do now? Eliminate me. Heidke mocks slightly before channeling a large portion of his chi. Since he was part of Milcar's soul, Heidke also possesses chi. It can be said that Heidke and Milcar's soul together make up the real Milcar, with the complete power of the golden core. Separated, the chi is divided, each obtaining 50% of the original chi. At this moment, although Heidke smiles slightly, the truth is that he feels a bit worried. Why is the sense of danger alerting him? Heidke touches his chest and looks at the bright golden core in front of him. On the other hand, Milcar, who has divided his soul, can now clearly see the world around him. It feels as if the previous world around him was covered by a transparent veil that didn't let him see reality and the universe as they really are. Probably Heidke's fault, Milcar thinks with a slight smile before simply focusing on the universe. At this moment, time in the entire universe stops. A lot of information reaches Milcar's mind. We can't go back, that's why it's hard to choose, but as long as you don't choose, everything remains possible. Time doesn't exist, it is simply the representation of the human mind to the events that have occurred. If time doesn't exist, then, is everything already predetermined? Several thoughts appear in Milcar's mind: the understanding of time, the different timelines, and how to travel between worlds, as well as the basic laws of the universe, overwhelm him for a moment. Heidke Tojo in front of Milcar looks like a statue. One of his hands seems to be grabbing a strange object and appears to be about to throw it at Milcar. In the chaos of a mental universe, Milcar emerges as a light of reason and logical thought. Once his soul split in two, getting rid of the part of his soul that was contaminated, the universe showing itself as it is. To Milcar's mind, thanks to his golden core, is incredible. In the different timelines, Milcar can see one in which he destroyed the world, one in which he harms humans, one in which he ends Aqua, one in which he simply takes his own life, and most importantly to him, one in which he was previously. The true timeline. Milcar's body shudders slightly. His mind momentarily ceases to process thoughts. In that fleeting moment, he observes the timeline. Seeing the kingdom of Belzerg, the city of Axel, everything as he remembered, however, in the city of Axel. Milcar notices an older Aqua walking hand in hand with a little girl around 2 years old, who shares her hair color. Additionally, Eris walks holding the hand of a boy with white hair. In an instant, countless thoughts and emotions flood Milcar's mind, from the reasons behind this occurrence to hypotheses of what's happening. Followed by comprehension. Milcar's eyes open with profound clarity, the universe reflected in his bright eyes. Wouldn't it be obvious to simply enter that timeline and once again hold Aqua and the others in his arms? Milcar narrows his eyes, feeling an uncertainty about this decision. It's as if he wants to see more of the universe that currently surrounds him. Of this time, the feeling of forgetting something crucial makes Milcar swallow, even though he lacks a throat. The amalgam of red viscous liquid composing Milcar's essence glows faintly, dimming to show deep contemplation. However, Milcar then observes Heidki Tojo closely. Heidki possesses half of Milcar's chi, making him equally powerful as Milcar himself. Yet, Heidki only has chi and lacks understanding of Milcar's capabilities or proper chi usage. Milcar's strength is not merely chi, but his accumulated experience and cosmic insights. Still, Milcar cannot simply eliminate Heidki Tojo without consequence. Destroying him would be like destroying half of his own essence, with uncertain effects. Though he has split his soul in two, discarding the portion tainted by Heidki, a connection remains. Milcar still feels a subtle link with Heidki's essence. Milcar quickly begins examining Heidki's memories to discover a containment method. Born into a modest family, his father worked as a blacksmith, his mother as a seamstress. Heidki grew up believing Japan was humanity's greatest empire, the Japanese the superior people. Soon, Heidki enlisted in the army and battled on the front lines. Milcar continues exploring Heidki's memories, his eyes narrowing upon discovering something noteworthy. During one of his battles, Heidki encountered a woman, beautiful and luminous. She was slightly reserved, with a face requiring no cosmetics. Heidki had a brief romance with her. They seemed genuinely in love. Heidki had to abandon her as the conflict escalated. "I will return, remember. I will be a champion of Japan." "Well then, please, will you marry me?" Heidki patted his chest, making the woman laugh softly. Later, Heidki won multiple battles, joined the military's high ranks, rising to second command after Hirohito. Heidki forgot his vow and only recalled it when approaching 60 years old. Desperate, Heidki returned to the small village where the woman resided, his heart pounding. His heart beat with hope, fantasy, and remorse. Upon arrival, he encountered some villagers, receiving devastating news. There was an elderly woman in the village, her garments torn, her hair unkempt. She appeared as someone driven insane by the conflict. She always spoke with pride, saying her husband is a champion of Japan. The elderly woman perished from hunger, her frail body with visible ribs, her hair crumbling like ash. Her body was discarded into the nearest river to prevent decay. Heidki seemed to freeze upon hearing the news, his breathing accelerated. His body moved rapidly to locate the river the villagers mentioned, but Heidki discovered nothing. As a man who had inflicted suffering on many during the conflict, Heidki had never displayed vulnerability. Yet in that moment he did. Desperate, Heidki remained by the riverbank, rocking his body while embracing his knees until starvation claimed him. Milcar observes Heidki's existence until he reincarnates in this new realm. Before reincarnating, Heidki's wish was to become a wandering spirit. Heidki consumed the essences of people or creatures that perished, thanks to his spectral constitution. He did this for many years, until he somehow uncovered a universal principle. Heidki then used his spectral energy to create multiple contracts, sending them to the modern realm. The first victim was a software developer, who unknowingly accepted the contract. He was doomed to program the website where Milcar witnessed the ritual. Milcar finishes, examining Heidki's consciousness. Milcar cannot help but be astonished. The laws of the universe are its governing rules. Discovering these laws grants a person dominion over one of them. Heidke discovered the law of transcendence, the ability to exist everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. However, Heidke was too weak in his state as a wandering spirit. This is why he used a method involving contracts. Understanding a universal law doesn't require any power or anything exceptional in itself. It's based on the mind's comprehension of the surrounding reality, understanding even the smallest elements. It's understanding how they affect their surroundings. Milcar has grasped several universal laws upon reaching the golden core. This is one reason he can simply halt time. Milcar observes Heidke with wide eyes before shaking his head. Then, Milcar looks at the elderly man in the wooden chair. God, Father. Milcar snorts coldly. God is deceased, I suppose. Milcar closes his eyes momentarily before placing his hand on Heidke's head. Milcar's chi flows, altering Heidke's sensory receptors. Although Heidke is just a dark amalgam that has assumed human shape, receptors remain. He still has some receptors, and chi allowing him to interact with the external realm. What Milcar is doing is modifying the functionality of these receptors within Heidke. Milcar moves his hand, disintegrating the body of God, Father, which is merely a corpse. With his chi, he positions Heidke to sit in that chair. Now, you are condemned to eternally repeat the scene where you discovered your beloved's demise. Milcar murmurs. Heidke Tojo can only witness a horrifying scene, the village, the news of his beloved's passing. His absolute rage and terror towards himself, and then his demise by the river. The scene repeats and will continue doing so until the end of existence. Heidke Tojo somehow manages to murmur something, while dark tears escape his false eyes. However, Milcar doesn't glance at Heidke Tojo a second time, he departs the hut, closing the door. For Milcar, the universe halts entirely. Time across the entire cosmos and timelines freezes. Anxious for an answer that has been troubling his mind for quite some duration, Milcar swiftly moves between timelines. Chapter 93, Which Path to Take? Various realms and universes appear before Milcar, however. He simply continues navigating through the threads of time. He delves into the deepest depths. It's unknown how much duration has passed, or how long Milcar has been exploring these threads. But after an immeasurable amount of duration, Milcar arrived at a timeline containing only a universe of space. It contains only a few thousand miles of space. In this universe, there is a kind of luminous planet occupying almost all the space. It is of an intense yellow color with folds that seem infinite. When Milcar observes it, his eyes open slightly in surprise. The most crucial law of the universe, the law that Milcar masters, time, is physically present. Time is physically present before Milcar. Milcar's eyes open wide, and he cannot help but observe this planet with a certain smile. An absurd thought crosses his mind. Time does not exist, time moves in one direction, it cannot reverse, and it cannot be altered. Time is time. This thought passes through Milcar's mind as he observes this planet. How to describe a feeling of anguish and sadness, along with a hint of wisdom. Milcar's heart begins to beat wildly, although he has no heart. His body itself begins reverting. His body begins reverting to its original form. Being in an almost infinite void of infinite possibilities, but bored because you know all possibilities. What should he do? This is because, in this planet, everything that has occurred and will occur exists. Everything that has occurred and will occur in the multiple timelines is contained. Everything is here. Countless years of experience from the perspective of all existences in countless threads. Milcar licks his lips. Even though he controls a universal law like time, he has a vague sensation. If he lightly touches the bright yellow planet before him, then his consciousness will be lost. His consciousness will be lost in the memories of countless lives in countless realms. Could he perhaps experience the realm from the perspective of a wealthy individual? Or maybe from the perspective of a servant in the Middle Ages or that of a craftsman? It is unknown. Then, if everything is already written, the mind and sensory receptors are only reconstructing memories. they are only reconstructing memories of something that has already occurred. The understanding regarding existence and consciousness now lies within Milcar's grasp. The reality is that time doesn't truly exist. The perception and truth about time is merely the mind's reconstruction. In Milcar's thoughts, several ideas linger watchfully. The next instant, they assault Milcar's spirit, causing his physical form to waver. Milcar can't help but feel somewhat melancholic about this discovery, understanding that if everything is predetermined across all timelines, his capacity to engage with the cosmos and reconstruct a sense of reality in his being is nothing more than an illusion. Milcar breathes in and out before contemplating various courses to pursue. But does it matter? What ought he to do? What can be accomplished when you know the conclusion of the game, should you continue playing? Various contemplations pass through Milcar's consciousness in just a moment, as if he were attempting to find some reason to do something. Milcar narrows his gaze, his non-existent heart and consciousness filled with that sensation of existential void again. Knowing that he is likely the sole individual in all timelines who has uncovered this, isn't that possessing awareness? Milcar moistens his lips before shedding a few tears. What ought he to do when reality manifests before him and it is a falsehood? The conclusion of the cosmos, the beginning and ending of everything, are practically something he can perceive if he desires. This world contains the cosmos, it is time itself, so what truly is this world? Milcar gazes at his feet for an instant before narrowing his vision. Is this the conclusion? Milcar observes the luminous yellow world as he whispers reluctantly, if he could. What significance does existence have when you have uncovered everything, when you have reached the conclusion and your heart wanders in an uncertain, turbulent sea? Milcar stammers somewhat. Perhaps it can function. Milcar narrows his vision before making a choice. Milcar grins somewhat before returning the path he came. Time passes. Beneath a tree in a woodland filled with a variety of flora and trees, a man awakens. To his right, leaning against him, are a woman and two girls. Their eyes are beautiful and brilliant crimson. The woman opens her vision and lovingly embraces the man to her left. The two girls, one an adolescent and the other approximately 12 years old, also embrace the man. Father! Two pleasant voices reach Milcar's hearing, causing him to awaken. Confused, Milcar can simply grin upon hearing the familiar voices. Milcar can't help but blink a few times. In his recollections, he can only recall a torment. Just when he was in the Crimson Wizard settlement, when he lost command of his physical form, Milcar was seized by the demon monarch. After being seized by the demon monarch, Milcar had no alternative but to battle in the dungeons of the demonic realm, fighting for his survival. He encountered a woman exactly similar to Yuyui. Confused, Milcar thought that Yuyui worked for the demon monarch, but he understood that this woman seems to be different from the Yuyui he knows. Yuyui, Megumin's mother and Hyazaburo's spouse, was not so flirtatious. Milcar, like a man who does not reject any woman who approaches him, had romantic encounters with Yuyui several times. After all, this was one of those responsible for bringing him sustenance, although he doesn't need to consume food. Surprisingly, Yuyui had two daughters, one exactly like Megumin and the other exactly like Komko. The two girls matured quickly, and in a few years Megumin almost reached maturity, and Komko already seems to be 12 or 13 years old. An experiment to generate a new race of mages, capable of destroying the entire Belzerg realm in a single day. That was what Milcar uncovered. After using his chi to caress Yuyui, this beautiful woman became part of his group. Milcar fought for several months to escape the demon monarch's dungeons, eventually defeating the demon monarch. At this instant, Milcar lightly rubs his head. Something feels incorrect, as if those recollections are a bit confusing. However, Milcar simply sighs upon understanding this. After all, his conflict against the demon monarch turned out to be something that almost destroyed the world itself. Milcar can't help but believe that the slight headache and his somewhat distorted contemplations were some kind of consequence due to his conflict against the demon monarch. It's unfortunate that the deities didn't survive. Milcar whispers quietly, remembering how the celestial plane was attacked by the demon monarch. Then a slight sensation of anxiety starts in his heart, bursting into various feelings of concern. Aqua, Eris, Darkness, he hadn't seen them for 4 long years. Can these women still care for him? Milcar swallows for an instant, before lightly rubbing his aching head. Husband, Yui whispers with some embarrassment, while leaning on Milcar's chest. For his part, Milcar simply observes the landscape around him. Is it so fantastic? Milcar gently caresses the little Komko in his arms, before getting up. Be that as it may, we must return to the city of Axel. Milcar whispers with a calm grin. Yui nods and Megumin grins broadly. Father, is it true that there's another Megumin? Megumin asks. As the daughter of an experiment carried out by the demon monarch's minions, she was eager to meet the real Megumin. Milcar nods with a grin before lightly swallowing, remembering something. Yes, haha, but everything she tells you is false. Also, I don't remember. Why is your name really Megumin? You should have another name like Agumin or something. It would be confusing when you meet the other Megumin, don't you think? Milcar coughs lightly, before mobilizing his powerful chi in the second stage of Foundation establishment. In the city of Axel, this place has transformed over the past 3 years. The infrastructure has changed and resembles a very well-constructed modern fortress. The guards, people in the 3rd stage of chi condensation, march around the walls. The leader, Dust, sharpens his Spanish rapier while reminiscing about the old times. Back then, 4 years ago, he met Milcar. His mere presence made the princess's people kneel, and he seemed like a deity walking on earth. Dust moistens his lips. What kind of chi cultivation would it take to achieve that power? Dust sighs. After all, 4 years ago Milcar mysteriously disappeared. On his journey to the Crimson Magic Settlement, Milcar simply vanished from one moment to the next. He didn't say anything. No one knew anything. It was as if he had been erased from existence. Dust was one of the people responsible for one of the squads that searched for Milcar in all possible places. He could still remember the anxiety of Miss Aqua, Eris, and Darkness when this happened. Chapter 94, Reunion. Their vibrant appearances gradually diminished, their bodies lost weight, and despite their strong constitutions, they appeared increasingly gaunt each day. Until it was discovered that all 3 were pregnant. Dust saw a new light of hope in the 3 women. They regained their will to live and seemed somewhat dazzling. Although never as vibrant and brilliant as when Milcar was present. 2 years ago, it was discovered that Milcar had been kidnapped by the demon lord and was imprisoned in the demonic realm. The entire populace of the city of Axel was ready to take up arms and charge recklessly to the front, all to recover the lord of the city. However, thanks to the leadership of Kaiuya and Kazuma, the situation was contained. The army of the city of Axel and the realm of Belzerg took a somewhat defensive position, almost like a serpent poised to strike. Aqua, Eris, and Darkness had given birth shortly before this news and didn't hear about Milcar's capture until a year ago. As expected, they made a scene, almost declaring they would run to the demonic realm to eliminate the demon monarch. Still, thanks to Lady Wiz, everything was contained, and the 3 began to think clearly again. A year ago, the conflict between the deities and the demon monarch commenced. Milcar had re-emerged at the front line with incredible strength and, together with the deities, assaulted the demonic realm. However, the confrontation extended, and no one knows if it has concluded or what the result of the conflict is. Dust, sharpening his blade, somewhat recalls the moments when Milcar was present before letting out a sigh of resignation. Yet from the distance, a small figure becomes visible. It approaches as if soaring. In just a few seconds, it will reach the main entrance of the city of Axel. In a somewhat luxurious chamber, Darkness, Aqua, and Eris were playing cards while 3 small children not far from them rested on a large bed. Although they were playing cards, their nervousness was evident. Dark circles beneath their vision and disheveled hair adorned their beautiful faces, and their clothes seemed somewhat dirty. HMPH2. Aqua narrowed her vision, seemingly attempting to find a word, but unable to think clearly. Her gaze shifted to her little daughter, almost 3 years old, sleeping on the big bed. She was a healthy girl with blue hair and brilliant sea-colored vision. Next to her was a boy with white hair and a confident face. On the other side rested a girl with blonde hair and a silly grin on her face. Aqua grinned somewhat before blinking. Her vision felt like two small spheres of hot iron being dipped in cold water. She observed her two friends, who had the same appearance, and couldn't help but sigh with some resignation. Lord Milcar has returned from the conflict. Lord Milcar has come back victorious. Humanity has risen against those cursed demons. Several shouts could be heard outside. Aqua narrowed her vision for an instant before assimilating those words. She opened her vision, and almost as if struck by lightning, she jumped up before running to the nearest window. The pedestrians in the streets were moving quickly, many of them soaring and some using special abilities. However, they were all shouting something similar. Milcar has returned. Aqua was left speechless before observing her two companions who were in the same state. For an instant, the anxiety, depression, pain, and anguish were erased from their tired bodies. Almost with the vitality of a young man, they let out a cry of surprise among themselves before using their abilities to verify if what was said is true. At the main entrance of the city of Axel, a man with 3 women behind him grinned as he observed the guards he hadn't seen in so many years. Milcar, soaring over the sky, cleared his throat somewhat. What kind of speech ought he to give? Milcar could sense the enormous number of people mobilizing to come to the main entrance sector. Milcar thought for an instant, but couldn't find a good speech in his consciousness. Then before he could say a few simple words, 3 familiar figures pounced on him. Crash! Milcar is surprised, though not entirely, by 3 beautiful women jumping to embrace him tightly. A slight trace of guilt passed through Milcar's heart as he sensed the warmth of these girls. In his consciousness, various contemplations raced, and his physical form seemed to react to these 3 girls. However, Aqua, Eris, and Darkness, who had pounced to embrace Milcar, didn't notice any of this. Like children reunited with their mothers, they couldn't help but shed tears while rubbing their faces against Milcar's clothes. What can be said? Insane dependence, perhaps, but could that be incorrect? Aqua, Eris, and Darkness are now addicted to Milcar. Their hearts beat, and their brains analyze various sensations poured into their spirits. Like intoxicating touches of a substance that seems unmatched in this world. Does it matter if what you live is real or false? Both Eris and Aqua prefer to live addicted to Milcar than to live an existence where their days are simply about managing the reincarnated as goddesses. In the divine plane that no longer exists. Anxiously drinking non-existent cocktails of different sensations that, when separated, overwhelm the spirit and torment the physical form while filling you with bliss. Healing your wounds, smoking these non-existent but so real sensations interpreted by the consciousness of a deity or a human. Both Aqua, Eris, and Darkness grin happily while their cheeks are flushed, and they look at Milcar with narrowed vision. Milcar could sense the sensations that fill the spirits of the 3 girls before him with bliss and joy. Sensations that, until recently, seemed like their jailers and tormentors. Is that so? Milcar wondered in his consciousness. There was no need for words for what is conveyed with a glance. After all, human language is simply about sharing ideas through sounds, or also through empathy. The slight sensation that something was incorrect, and Milcar's slight headache ceased at this instant and disappeared. The somewhat blurry recollections in his consciousness were accepted and archived. After all, although Milcar initially didn't desire to come to this world, what's incorrect with it? Milcar grinned. It's a magical world and a cosmos of which he barely knows this world. Yet this world still holds secrets for Milcar. Coughs. Behind Milcar, Yuyui coughed somewhat, not achieving her goal. She simply moved a bit closer to Milcar to embrace him from behind. A human experiment. What does it matter? Yuyui grinned mischievously. At this instant, she was eager to meet her real self in this world. However, she simply couldn't let Milcar stop caring for her. After all, she already has 2 children with Milcar, right? HMPH. The 4 women embracing Milcar let out slight moans of satisfaction, and didn't seem willing to let go of Milcar for the instant. Chapter 95, End. Before Milcar could do or say anything, 3 children soared through the air a little above him. One of them, with a baby face and blue hair, opened her mouth wide before looking at her mother, Aqua. "Is that father?" the girl asked softly as she looked at Milcar. Her brilliant blue vision seemed somewhat moist as her physical form began to tremble. Aqua, who had noticed the little girl's presence, turned to look at her before grinning warmly. "Rosa, why don't you come and meet your father?" Rosa's vision widened even more. Did she have a father? Since the instant she was born, she had never seen her father. Her questions about who Milcar was had been silenced by a depressed Aqua, while Miss Wiz always told her that her father was a powerful man. Captured by the demon monarch, Rosa couldn't help but remember the words she heard from some maids when they talked about Milcar. So was her father dead? Rosa thought so until this instant. Her 2 brilliant blue vision watched Milcar before she clenched her teeth and soared quickly towards him. The reactions of the other girl with blonde hair and the boy with white hair were almost identical to Rosa's. The girl was named Blanca, and the boy was called Retribution. Now a second later, Milcar was attacked again, this time by 3 children who couldn't stop crying as they embraced any part of his physical form. From his back to his legs, there was a brief instant of silence that was etched into the minds of every inhabitant of the city of Axel. Soon the news that the demon monarch had been completely defeated filled the hearts of every inhabitant of Axel with joy and happiness. However, although Milcar's return was great news, another sad piece of news equally popular among the people was that the deities of the divine realm fought alongside Milcar. Against the demon monarch, they were completely eliminated. The divine realm ceased to exist. The deities who once protected the world were no longer there, and only Milcar remained alive. Although the news was sad, the other news still brought joy to the hearts of the people of Axel. The instant Milcar returned to Axel, a caravan with several cultivators of the second stage of Foundation establishment set out for the Belzerg realm to deliver the good news. At this instant in a classic tavern, a woman with blonde hair continued drinking from the glass of liquor in front of her. Luna, who seemed to have lost weight, couldn't help but sharpen her hearing as she heard the words of the various adventurers in the tavern. Milcar returns victorious. Luna's heart skipped a beat as she opened her large crimson vision wide, her physical form trembling as her consciousness processed those words. After a few seconds, Luna ran out of the tavern. In an office filled with various papers, Sina, looking as bad or worse than Luna, heard the shouts in the street. Her face showed annoyance as she didn't analyze what was happening outside. When she opened the nearest window to yell at the people to be quiet, the sounds of people celebrating reached her hearing, making her physical form tremble. Sina's reaction was similar to Luna's instance earlier. The real Megumin, now grown, looked at Kazuma beside her. After so much time, she had established a romantic relationship with Kazuma, and her magic had exponentially increased. Megumin grinned as her vision seemed to illuminate the chamber like powerful crimson lights. She grinned while grabbing her staff, ready to go tease Milcar a bit. In a chamber surrounded by 3 beautiful women, Milcar enjoyed Aqua's delicious crimson lips while darkness began to undress him. Desperate, Eris wasted no time attempting to remove Milcar's pants, all while Yui watched from a distance with a perverted grin. "Come on, do it while I watch," Yui whispered quietly as she rubbed her palms together. Milcar planned to deal with the problem of Yui, Megumin, and Komko being creations of the demon monarch's minions later. For now, he needed to spend several days of intense pleasure with the 4 women in the chamber. However, as he did this, a card written on a brilliant yellow card fell out of one of Milcar's pockets. This card, more like a note with something written on it, shone for an instant, catching everyone's attention. HMPH. Eris looked at the card for an instant before picking it up with her hands. HMPH, Milcar, what is this? Aqua, stopping her kisses, asked with genuine curiosity, tilting her head to the right. Is it a card from a woman you abandoned somewhere? HMPH, Milcar, you are so Darkness began to whisper with a visible blush on her face, but Eris simply examined the front and back of the card before narrowing her vision in confusion. This was because the card had only a few words written on the front, and the back was completely blank. Milcar narrowed his vision with some curiosity. He didn't even know where this card came from. Then Milcar signaled Eris to read the words on the card aloud. The who is not bound by mortal sensations can achieve perfect understanding, but what to do when the trivial sensations, which are just brain functions with no other spiritual or magical significance? Sir, then, if you are reading this, what does it matter? What does it matter if it's false or real? As long as you believe it's real, anything can also be. Eris narrowed her vision after finishing reading the words on the card. A slight sensation of emptiness and existential crisis from the card made Eris throw it away with a slight grunt. Anger, fear, thirst for understanding. Eris had sensed several emotions not belonging to her coming from that card. Her vision shone with a white light before she shook her head. Milcar, Milcar, that card hurt me, and it was something in your pocket. This, won't you compensate me? Eris acted coquettishly while moving her vision to look at Milcar. Milcar sensed a slight sensation of acute affection corrupting his heart. His chi moved, destroying the card that was thrown away, disintegrating it before Milcar shook his head. The world is big, the cosmos is big, so why should he feel bad? Milcar, with a thirst for understanding and intentions to spend a long time, perhaps infinitely, with these four women. Well, there can always be more. Milcar whispered something dangerous under his breath, before gently caressing Eris's right cheek with deep affection. What's the point of knowing everything? What's the point when there's nothing left to uncover that will only fill your consciousness with strange contemplations? Milcar whispered something quietly before kissing Eris. And that's all, folks. Now some content. Epilogue. This. Milcar raises an eyebrow as he stares with two shining vision at the sheet of paper in front of him. To summarize, what Milcar has in his hands is a detailed report on the growth of Axel City over the last few years. It can be said that the PIB has multiplied tenfold. The income is 5 times bigger, and the costs have remained at periods before Milcar ruled Axel City. Although it has not grown in size, the walls as well as the material from which the houses are made in Axel City have improved in quality. Thanks to the Chi, several Axel City inhabitants have uncovered new ways to refine it as well as new uses. This is understandable to Milcar. After all, in the immortal cultivation worlds, there were many professions such as alchemist, blacksmith, and several others that depended on Chi. Now Milcar looks at the small sheet of paper with the new professions uncovered, thanks to the implementation of Chi. Holy Knight, Grand Paladin, Chaos Sorcerer, Ruler of Black Magic. Milcar doesn't finish reading the names of these professions because they sound too much. How would it say it, haha, classic of a medieval or fantasy world? Milcar grins, observing the trembling Luna in front of him. Miss Luna, Axel City has certainly prospered under your hands. Milcar grins calmly as he sits in the chief's chair in Axel's governor's office. However, before Milcar can sigh with relief and leave all the work to Luna, this woman quickly steps forward several paces and slams the table in front of Milcar. That's exactly why. Luna breathes shakily as she shouts with almost desperation. Hazi. Luna grins sheepishly after noticing her movements and scratches her head lightly. I mean, Mr. Milcar, aren't you forgetting that you promised me something? Luna's words make Milcar's vision widen in surprise. What does this mean? Milcar squints his vision with even more distrust before remembering. It seems that he promised this woman that he would grant her a wish if she fulfilled a goal. But what goal was it? Milcar rubs his chin to give the impression that he was thinking. However, the truth is that he doesn't remember anything of what he promised this woman. Luna, by the way, weren't you? Milcar squints, remembering that Luna actually seemed to be one of those crazy women that so many fans had in her previous existence. However, Luna takes this instant to place one of her hands on top of Milcar's head and begin to caress Milcar's head. A wish, my lord, I wish you to make me your spouse. Luna says shamelessly. Her brilliant vision completely crimson and her sinister grin makes Milcar remember some scenes from several anime in his earlier existence. Almost got it, this should be at Yandir. Milcar remembers before somewhat shaking his head. A warm grin graces Milcar's face as he gently pats Luna's hand to stop touching his hair. Instead, he places his palm on Luna's head. The small, gentle movements of Milcar's hand together with the chi released from his hands makes Luna close her vision happily and remember the old days. Luna's charming face, with still some visible dark circles under her vision, relaxes. Her yellow to orange-colored hair moves somewhat, as if small currents of electricity were passing through them. Milcar's chi slips through Luna's pores, directly penetrating every inch of Luna's skin, first affecting her brain. Without Milcar having to do anything necessarily difficult, his chi enters and begins to soothe Luna's brain, causing her to let out a soft sound of pleasure. HMPH. Luna lets out a restrained sound as she shifts her stance, moving her wide hips from left to right in a rhythmic motion as her figure sways. Her wide hips grow somewhat in size, while her form also grows like the little skirt Luna was wearing because she was looking forward to Milcar's visit made a slight noise, a familiar noise of the threads being torn. Yet that little secretary skirt still seemed to hold up like a champion. Milcar observes this with a white-toothed grin. Can just one of his touches cause this? Milcar understands something very clearly, and that something is that no matter what kind of woman or how arrogant a woman is, as long as he uses his chi, this woman will inevitably submit to him. Sitting on his shoulders and riding Milcar like a horse, Comco looks around with a grin of white teeth. The lonely streets, almost at midnight in the city of Axel, are the best. Really? Milcar asks with a cheerful laugh upon hearing what Comco said. HMPH, yeah. That idiot Kazuma confused my sister with the other Megumin and kissed her without her permission. Aunt Aqua had to come to calm my sister down. Comco whispers with a somewhat blushing face. The fact that there are two Megumins, two Comcos and two Yuyuis in this world gives Comco, Milcar's daughter, a headache. However, the reason Comco insisted on accompanying Milcar during his night walk wasn't because of that. Father, Comco asks with some fear. Some street food vendors greet Milcar and various shops or taverns are full. The streets of Axel are lively and people are happy. Is something incorrect? Milcar responds. There was a slight silence. I had a dream like another world. I mean, you were there. My mom was there, my sister, everyone was there. HMPH, Mom was crying, saying you were leaving. Would never come back. Comco embraces Milcar's head with a slight tremor running through her entire physical form. Milcar says nothing, simply a slight sensation of guilt passes through his heart without him knowing why. We ate banana bread, we saved one for you but you never came, and then everything turned black. Father, do you think this could be true? Comco asks with some doubt, making Milcar narrow his vision. Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm only in the 4th stage of foundation establishment. My cultivation won't advance anymore, not because I don't desire to, but because I can't. With my current strength, I can't confirm if there's something like what you mentioned. Milcar sighs quietly. If he had the chance, he'd truly like to know if something like what Comco said could be true. After all, he always senses something is incorrect. But that sensation is easily ignored by Milcar 99.99% of the time. Comco rests her head against Milcar's for an instant before grinning softly. Father, I want banana bread, and let's take it to Mom and sister. This time I don't want you to miss your portion of banana bread. Days later. Today is a day of celebration in the city of Axel. Princess Iris has arrived in the city, and the wedding of Milcar and his women has been announced. On the streets of Axel, many people dressed in elegant suits can be seen. It seems that all the inhabitants of Axel have decided that this would be one of the days to be remembered for the next generations. In a chapel of the goddess Aqua that Milcar had previously built, only Milcar is present, sitting under the statue of the water goddess. Observing the entire chapel, Milcar closes his vision while leaning his back against one of the statue's legs. Saying that he doesn't sense a little anxious would be a complete lie. Milcar can't remember when was the last time his physical form sensed the slight breeze of anxiety running through every part of his skin, as if it were seasoning it for a successful flaying. Certainly, the sensation of anxiety doesn't come from his upcoming wedding, but from something else just as important. From somewhere in the cosmos, from some direction Milcar doesn't know, comes a message he can only understand when he's sleeping. The voice is that of a man, a pitiful man, a man whose voice has been influenced by hell and can't pronounce a word coherently without starting to babble. Save me. A simple word repeats in Milcar's dreams, but save him from what? Milcar doesn't understand. What is there in the cosmos that needs to be saved? However, despite these messages, Milcar's instinctive reaction is to ignore it. As if the owner of that voice were the one who would bring the conclusion to everything he knows, the conclusion of his family, the realm, the city. Such a voice that asks for help and seems to bring misfortune just by imagining it makes Milcar not feel compassionate at all. Save who? Milcar sighs maliciously while smoking a small cigarette. But that voice brought him those contemplations he had after waking up. Why is everything so perfect? Milcar scratches his cheek. It's as if everything were programmed for him to be happy. No more deities that can threaten his dominion, no more demon monarch, a cosmos to explore, and a harem of the most beautiful women in existence. Milcar's heart skips a beat as the sensation of despair seeps into his skin, little by little, unhurriedly. This is not a dream, Milcar has already checked, but there's something in how everything was resolved that makes Milcar doubt the facts and truths. Even so, Milcar hides this sensation deep in his heart as always, as has been routine every day since he woke up after fighting the demon monarch. He grins somewhat. Soon Milcar disappears from his own position. At an altar, Milcar appears, his black and white suit highlighting his elegance. In front of him are 6 women. Yui wears a beautiful one-piece wedding dress that enhances her charming face with her hair down, and a bouquet of crimson roses in her hands. Darkness wears a 2-piece wedding dress, a bit revealing that gives Milcar a sensation of desire. Darkness's grin is the cherry on top. Aqua wears a blue wedding dress. The dress clings well to her curves, and the part of her white legs is visible for Milcar to see. Eris, on the other hand, has a rather conservative wedding dress. Eris's main charm is her goddess-like face, her crimson lips highlighted by a shiny lipstick. Wiz is a real sight to behold in her wedding dress, her chest barely covered by the purple dress while her hips seem to be about to break the dress. Wiz with a veil looks at Milcar with loving vision. While Luna wears a yellow wedding dress leaving the side of her legs visible, she seems to have beautiful long stockings. In his own situation, Milcar feels desire beginning to take control of his physical form. His vision delights in the details of each of the women's dresses, wishing he could remove those beautiful dresses and see the skin underneath, as well as the playful lingerie they must be wearing. At this instant, Milcar grins. That terrifying sensation that threatened to flay him alive disappears. Could the cure be so simple? In fact, it always has been for Milcar. A simple gesture of affection from the right individual could provide more warmth than hell and bring him more will to live than 1,000 trips to the psychologist. For Milcar, at this instant he is truly chosen again. What is there in the cosmos? What is the voice that calls him? Who cares? Sometimes ignorance can bring much more happiness than the truth, or well, almost always. Milcar says quietly while grinning. Soon the wedding will begin, and the audience is already cheering everyone on the scene, shouting for the city of Axel to have more heirs. The end.